Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm Sally Ganga from College Coach. For our second segment, I'm welcoming Jay Bonham, a colleague here at College Coach, who's also the father of one college student and another matriculating college student. He's going to be dropping off at college very shortly for his first year. So he'll be sharing his insights on what parents need to know about preparing for the drop-off day and the day itself. For the third segment, I'll be talking with College Coach veteran Mary Suyun about how to make the most of Naviance, which is a college counseling program at many high schools that can be useful in all kinds of ways. So if you attend an American high school, either in the US or abroad, ask them if they have Naviance because it's pretty useful. But for this first segment, I'm talking with Beth Feinberg-Keenan. Those of you who are watching this on video will see her there. She's another College Coach veteran, but this time of our finance team about refunds from colleges, which when they proposed this topic to me, I was like, is that a thing? Do colleges give refunds? I wasn't aware of that. So Beth is sharing the good news today, which I think is great. So welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Sally.
So where do these refunds come from? I mean, I'm assuming it's from the college, but maybe I'm wrong.
So typically you're right. The refunds do come from the college, but it's just not the college giving you money and be like, hey, congratulations, you have money. So where these refunds are typically coming from, it's an overage of financial aid, or it's an overage of loans, whether it's student loans that your student is taking out, parent loans that you've borrowed as a parent, or private loans that your student is taken out and the family has co-signed on. So it's not just the school being kind and giving a windfall and saying, hey, these students are getting a refund, but that refund is being generated from different sources of financial assistance that once it's applied to their bill. So the tuition's been paid for. If the student's living on campus, that room and board has been paid for. And then what they have is they have excess money sitting on their account, which can generate a refund to the student.
Okay. So basically a student might get a credit, it sounds like, on their account. So what can they do with that then?
So there's a number of things that they can do with that. One of the things that I often encourage a family to do when they have that refund is to make sure that when they're planning what they want to do with that refund, is make sure that they're looking at the entire year. Mm-hmm. So while that refund might be there for the fall semester, so all the families who are getting ready to drop their students off at school and that bill is paid and now they have that refund on the account, you want to make sure that they don't need that money for the spring semester before they figure out what are they going to do with it. So one of the things that they can do with that refund is, if they don't need it, step into the financial aid office and ask them, especially if it's coming from a private loan or a parent loan, ask them if it can be sent back to the servicer. So be sent back to the lender where they took that money out from. If they do that, it will save on fees if the school sends that money directly back to the original lender. But sometimes those refunds are coming from maybe excess grant funds. I used to work with some kids who were on full scholarship or were student athletes, and they did have refunds. They had refunds that they needed to use the money for books, or they had refunds that they needed to use the money for off-campus housing. So in those situations, then they need to make sure that they're requesting that money to be released to the student or to the family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think that's really important to note, that sometimes aid can be there for things like books.
Yes.
So absolutely. So I'm sorry, there's a lot of noise. I'm going to just pause this just for a moment and we'll go right back. So we've gone through some of the things that the refund can be used for. I also wanted to return quickly to making sure that you're not going to need it for second semester, because I think a lot of people will assume, well, if I don't need it first semester, I'm not going to need it second semester. So what are some examples of things that might pop up? What came to mind for me was, for example, study abroad. That can be more expensive than just being on campus. Is there anything else?
So what I often think about is, for second semester, maybe for the fall semester, they made a deposit, especially for incoming students. They made an initial deposit to hold their space in the class. So when they plan for the year, loans or typically dispersed in equal disbursement. So if it's a semester school, you're going to get half in the fall and half in the spring. And so maybe in the fall semester, their bill is a little bit less because they made some payments to the school. They made, maybe they took in, made that initial deposit, but they don't have those credits or those payments for the spring semester. So that's why they're going to need that excess from the fall semester to go towards the spring semester. But you make a good point too, Sally, like study abroad. I mean, there might be additional costs there. If a student is taking classes in the spring semester where maybe there's additional lab expenses that they have that they don't have in the fall semester, that's another reason that they might have additional expenses in that next semester that they don't have in that first semester where they have that credit on their account.
All right. And so if they don't need the money now, though, like for books or any of these other things, what other kind of options do they have?
Well, I mentioned that they could have it sent back to the lender. So if they don't need it, they realize that they don't need it for the year. Why keep money, especially if it's coming from loans? Like, why keep money where interest is accruing that you don't necessarily need to have? So look at sending that back, because if it's your first year, even if it's your second year and you have that money sitting there, keep in mind that interest is accruing for all of these years that loan money is either sitting there or you have it released to you. If you feel that you need it, maybe it's not for the semester, but maybe for incidentals, you can go to the student accounts office, you can go to the bursar's office. They're one and the same, but I made sure that I called them both things because some schools will call them student accounts offices, some will call it bursar's office, and you want to make sure that you're going to that office or contacting that office to have that credit released to you. Parents know that typically the credit's going to be released to the student. So if it's coming from a private student loan, if it's coming from excess gift assistance, that money is going to be released to the student. But if it's coming from a parent loan, a plus loan, that money is going to be released to the parent. So if the student is anticipating that money to be released to them, or the parents are thinking like, hey, that money is for living expenses, then the parent needs to make sure that they are working with student accounts or the bursar's office and putting it in writing that's okay to release the money to my student.
Okay. I wonder too, would your advice be different? Some loans, obviously the interest is accruing while they're in college, but I know that I was lucky enough to, or unlucky enough, depending on how you look at it, but I had a pretty favorable loan when I was in college. And so interest didn't accrue while I was in college. It didn't start accruing. What I had to pay back 6 months after I graduated was exactly what I had borrowed, and interest started accruing at that point, was my understanding of it. So would it be different then? I mean, would you kind of tell the student, why not hang on to it just in case?
Great point, Sally. So yes, some of the credit could be generated from a subsidized loan, which you were referring to that you had when you were in school. I had a subsidized loan when I was in college too. So if it's from a subsidized loan, by all means, you can keep it. Maybe you want to have it released to you. You put it into a savings account and you put it into your checking account and just kind of hold it there if you have something else comes up. Maybe that year that you've studied abroad and your expenses are a little bit more and you're like, well, how do I cover that shortfall? And you're like, oh, I didn't need that subsidized money then. So I could use that additional money, to pay for that additional study abroad expense. But often I feel that the people that I talk with, where their refunds are coming from nowadays, are not as frequent coming from subsidized loans, but it seems like they're more frequently coming from additional private loans and parent loans that families are taking out to cover shortfalls that are not covered by financial aid and to cover off-campus housing. I mean, if you're not living on campus and you're living in an off-campus apartment, you can still use financial aid and you can still use loans to cover those expenses. So you're likely going to have an excess on your account, and you do need to have that money released to you to make sure that you can cover your rent and your utilities and your food and everything else that you had borrowed for living expenses while you're enrolled in school.
Yeah. In other words, don't just spend it unwisely. Think carefully about what your needs are now and what they might be. down the road. I think that's probably like the basic summary of this of this thing. And use the bursar's office as talk to them because maybe they can help, right?
Right. And talk with financial aid also, because if you have this excess on your account and you're not sure what to do with it or why it's there, stop into the financial aid office, have somebody in the financial aid office walk through your account, make sure that there's no outstanding charges that are all of a sudden going to show up on your account, and
Mhm.
that now you're going to owe money to the school because you took out that refund. And make sure that they're looking at the next semester too, to make sure that there's no surprises, that you've planned appropriately for the next semester. But if you can check all of those boxes off, right, then stop in with student accounts, the bursar's office, and make your plan of like, I need that money released to me, or I want that money sent back to the lender because I actually don't need it. I don't end up needing it this year. I took out too much money.
Mhm. Mhm. All right, great. Thank you so much, Beth. That was really helpful.
Thanks for having me today, Sally.
Oh, absolutely. All right. When we return, I will be welcoming Jay Bonham to talk about dropping your kid off at school.